is. Yeah.
So it is Monday. I cannot believe, Brice, it's the 22nd already. Monday the 22nd. It's cold here. I've got my fire going. I've got my daughter out doing the horses because they're hungry. It's Thanksgiving week for you. How are you all doing? How are you doing?
Well, I'm cold as well, but it's like 75 here. So for people in England, that would be like
That would be our
sunbathing.
summer. Yeah.
But we're spoiled down here in the South. So, you know, it's I feel like the whole my tagline these last couple of years is, this is interesting.
Yeah.
Did I really agree to come back for this? You know?
Exactly. Are you sure, soul contract? Are you sure? Isn't it? It's so true, Brice. Isn't it interesting? I must admit, I posted some pictures of the moon over the weekend, which was spectacular. Also quite a few orbs in my pictures as well. Either that or alien ships, one or the other. But
Take me with you.
yeah, I had such a weird weekend. I was really not myself at all, as my husband will testify to. But today I met some amazing friends for lunch. Absolutely love them to bits. Spoken to Mel K, and now I'm speaking to you. So I am back up on track. But I think lots of people are feeling this roller coaster, aren't they?
Yeah, and I will say for us here in America, you know, Thanksgiving, I know like other countries have a Thanksgiving, like Canada has their Thanksgiving, and I don't know what that experience is like in other countries, but here in America, Thanksgiving is a really big holiday.
Yeah.
You know, growing up, for me, we always had that week off for school, the whole week off for Thanksgiving, and then 2 weeks off for Christmas. And you know, you had the Macy's Day Parade, Thanksgiving Day, that was a big deal. And growing up, and even now as an adult, it was always my favorite holiday because there was no gift giving. There was no pomp and circumstance when it came to the festivities. It was literally you just having a meal with your friends and family and having fellowship with your loved ones. And even as you get older, we have this whole thing, Friendsgiving, where a couple days before Thanksgiving, all friends get together and have a potluck and just celebrate each other. And that's what I've always loved about this holiday, is it was just literally you celebrating your love for your fellow man, your friends, and your family. And the sad thing is, I know I text you. Now I'm a vegetarian, so I don't pay attention to like the prices of meat. But I saw that in some states, the United States, a turkey, which is the main dish people serve at Thanksgiving, is $75 right now, which is ridiculous. And so I know a lot of Americans are in this situation. Of course, you know, the powers that be don't want us to actually have this holiday.
Yeah.
But most people are basically giving that the middle finger and going about it anyway, rightly so. But people are struggling.
Yeah.
I mean, people are struggling to keep, and for children too. It's like, you know, I look at my sister who has 3 small children. Her oldest child is 9 and she has a 7-year-old, and then she has a baby. And it's like, she's trying desperately to make things as normal as possible for them, because these issues that we're dealing with are adult issues.
Yes.
They're complex, and these children have paid the price anyway. My sister took her 2 oldest out of their original school and was fortunate enough to be able to put them into a private school just so they wouldn't have to deal with this. And it's just, I kind of feel it in the air. It's like people are stressed out because they want to be able, especially parents, they want to be able to keep things as normal as possible. I have such great memories. I mean, we grew up with, my mom had 3 sisters and they each have 2 kids. And my grandparents died when my mother was quite like early 30s. And so when her and her sister we spent a lot of time with our cousins. They were like our siblings. And I have such wonderful memories of the holidays with my cousins and playing and the food and all that kind of stuff. And at Christmas, like playing with each other's toys, and just knowing that there are parents out there that are trying to preserve that in the face of the massive inflation that literally seems to have happened overnight since one administration to the next. And also the stress of Christmas coming up, but not trying to show that to their children, that they're stressed. I mean, my heart just goes out to people right now. And I know that we're in a WAR, like we all know that. And it's a very different type of WAR because a lot of people aren't even aware that's what's going on. But it's heart-wrenching, it's gut-wrenching to see people in these positions and to feel that pain for people. I mean, are you feeling that I know you mentioned something about the heating expense.
Yeah, we've got huge inflation costs here, and certainly fuel for your cars. whether it's petrol or diesel, household fuel to heat your houses. We're in winter now, it's cold over here, there's a lot of people that live on their own, a lot of elderly people, etc. It's really, you know, really hard, and the price of our food has just gone up like this. And I did a little video I'll put up later when I get a chance on site, just of me when I was out with my dogs, and I was like, I really sympathize with people because it's so easy to be judgmental, but it's really hard for a lot of families to afford healthy food at the moment for themselves and for their animals. And it genuinely is, because the price of junk food is so low and the price of real food is just going up like this. And but there's always a different way of looking at things. And then what I also thought is, I thought, well, actually, you know, people have got to stop expecting exotic fruits from across the other side of the world in midwinter. There's so many downsides to a lot of the gluttony. And, you know, I can remember when we grew up, we didn't have big supermarkets. So you went to the greengrocers and the butchers and the bakers and things like this, and they had small supermarkets. But actually this gluttony, this ridiculousness of shipping food halfway across the world and everything like that, there's so many things where we've gone so off balance. It's really hard at the moment because a lot of people are feeling the brunt of it in really, really horrible ways. But we do need massive change. We certainly don't need their new normal. We need our new normal, our new creative normal. But I think everyone I'm speaking to at the moment, Brice, is really having a lot of up and downs. And you know, my thing is just, it's so important to connect with people that uplift you, which is why I'm talking to you so much, because you've got to find ways. At the end of the day, we have to find a way for ourselves to cope with this. We've got to stop this looking for sort of external saviors, for external people to do it for us, because it's the choices that we're making on an hour by hour, day by day basis, which are really going to affect our reality.
You know, it's so funny. I was just talking about this with Shanti and Mornay over on Aquarius Rising Africa. We started talking. I said one of the most, we were talking a lot about the gnosis versus the EDO, the inner knowing versus the outer knowing. And I said to her, like, one of the most amazing things in this journey has been connecting with people all over the world on this platform, people that I never knew before, but I feel like I've known you guys forever. Like, I feel like we've been friends forever, and it's just like, oh yeah, there's Catherine. And that is one of the beautiful things, because I feel like the boundaries of country lines are dissolving in that kind of a way. You know, the other side also wants the country lines to dissolve as well. But for us, it's different, because you look historically in the past at their the way that these different, I mean, you know, Catherine, you're from England. My ancestors are from England, France, Germany. We're Europeans both of European descent. The whole European area was constantly conquering each other and fighting amongst each other. But it was all like a propaganda machine for this ruling elite that's still in charge now. And I think we're starting to figure it out, that it's never been us versus us. It's always us versus them. And that's one of the beautiful things, is that we're all coming together as humanity. Like, screw this. This is our planet. You can't do this to us anymore. But getting there and watching this beast that they are, you know, it's not like they're just going to magically dissolve. I mean, we are seeing the matrix crumble to an extent, but it's got to actually crumble. And that's the matrix in which we live in as well. You know, we have no choice but to have bank accounts with these big banks, or to have, you know, somebody was talking about that the other day on another podcast I was listening to, that isn't necessarily a podcast of our community, but they were talking about how, like, even when I was a kid back in like the 80s and 90s here in America, people banked at small local banks. They only trusted their money with these small local banks. And all of a sudden now you have to have an account with a big branch that's connected to, you know, I bank with Chase, which is JP Morgan, which is obviously connected to banks in England. And it's just this huge, like, we have to be a part of it. We can't choose, you know, as far as, like, especially the currency, we can't just create our own currency at this point. We have to allow that system to fall first. And I know we were talking about before we started filming that we know it's going to be okay. We know at the end it's going to be okay. It has no choice. We're going into the age of Aquarius. But man, are we feeling the brunt of this matrix collapsing right now. And it's it is a testimony too to the resilience of humanity that we are able to walk through this dark night of the soul together and make things do. But I agree with you. I feel pretty lucky growing up down here in Georgia because we are able to produce a lot. This is the
Yeah.
land of cotton and peanuts. Like we're able to, and peaches. Georgia is the peach state. But we are moving into our winter season where it's not going to be, there's not going to be as much produce. But it's interesting when you look at like Ayurvedic healing and natural healing, there are certain times of year where your body should be eating the food available in your area. You shouldn't have to eat that peach in January. Your body needs different compositions of food for different seasons because your body is a part of that natural rhythm of nature. And maybe that's the positive side of everything kind of falling apart, is that we're going to be forced to go back to that and going inside of ourselves to figure out what our ancestors already knew. I mean, our ancestors are probably laughing at us right now, rolling in their graves like, how did y'all forget this?
Completely. I mean, when I first got into studying my herbal medicine, and I was so excited about it, and I can so remember my grandmother knew it all. She knew it all. That was common knowledge for all of them. And I thought I was being so clever because I knew exactly what hawthorn did and milk thistle and nettles, and I knew what, and she knew it all. And they use them daily in their lives, not necessarily daily, but they knew what to reach for when they needed to. They knew not to overtake from nature. And I think the other thing is like, we all know that our food supplies, our water supplies, our air have all been deliberately poisoned. And I know that's going to stop because, the old cliche, when you shine a light on it and raise awareness, you cannot get away with that behavior any longer. It's so fascinating to see, though. I was speaking to someone on my journey back from my lunch today. Speaking to a friend, we were talking about the younger people of the sort of teenagers and 20s sort of age group, and we were saying it's really bizarre how they seem to be the ones that are really complying with this because they've done such a great job at them where they made their life. Mel K was talking about how they've made flying such a terrible experience for people now in the States because they don't want people flying. They want people staying put. So what's the way to do it? You make it so unpleasant so that they choose not to do it anymore. And we think this is what they've done with a lot of the younger people, is they've closed down their schools, they've shut off all their social life, they've stopped them having any sort of normal life. So then when they dangle that bait to sort of say, well, if you do this or if you do that, you can get back. Of course, the poor things are so desperate to do it, because you hit the nail on the head. This isn't their battle. This shouldn't be ones that they should be. I mean, perhaps the teenagers and 20 somethings, yes, but the younger ones, no. But they've been, unfortunately, very smart. But we've got to be smarter. We've got to really pull together more, I think. Really look for unity in every opportunity.
We were actually, Shanti and I were talking, and Mornay were talking about this exact thing too. Like when I was a child, I feel like, so I'm right between Generation X and the Millennials. And I actually, some timelines I'm Generation X, some I'm Millennial, actually get along better with Generation X. And all of my boyfriends from the past have been like, and currently have been like 10 years older than me. That's just always where I fit in more. And I feel like I was the very last generation, at least here in America, to have kind of a Mayberry type childhood where we just didn't have, I mean, one of my favorite memes, I'm paraphrasing, I've seen passed around, is that kids today will never know. And I know that you guys do commercials and your TV shows a little bit differently in the UK, but here in America, like every 5 minutes in the show, there's a set of commercials on the TV when I was a kid, before the internet, before Netflix, all that stuff happened. And the meme was like, kids today will never know the adrenaline when you ran to the bathroom during a commercial break and your sibling was sitting there screaming, "It's on!"
Exactly.
Because you couldn't pause it. And I was saying, when I was a kid, like we didn't wear helmets on our bikes. We were on our bikes all over the neighborhood with the neighborhood kids. Our parents never knew where we were.
No, never
knew where we were. We just came back when it got dark outside, you know? And we also had a kind of a fear of our parents that if we didn't get back in time, we were going to get punished. And so in a lot of ways, like in high school and even into some of my university, we were not, when the internet was starting to kind of come around, we weren't even allowed to use that as a reference source. We still had to use the library and look stuff up.
We didn't even have computers. I mean, we didn't have mobile phones.
No,
have computers. Obviously, they're older, but as you say, and also when you made an arrangement, Brice, to meet a friend. So when we were at school, and you'd or even at college, and you'd sort of make an arrangement that you'd meet them outside the cinema at 7 o'clock on Friday night, and you jolly well did it because you made a commitment, and you couldn't just get hold of them and message them. My sister, who's got a daughter who's a couple of years younger than my daughter, it's a nightmare for that poor girl because her friends are always changing their mind. They're always go for a night out and then they'll abandon you halfway through the night. We never did that. You know, you had your honor amongst friends and you had your sense of responsibility. And I think, yes, there are obviously a lot of advantages technology. We wouldn't have been speaking like this. But the disadvantages also need to be looked into, and any tool can be used for good or bad. Yeah, I feel so grateful for when I grew up. I really do.
Me too.
I really feel very grateful.
Because that was the same thing too. We had that, like, I still remember, I don't know anybody's phone number now. I only know my phone number and like my mom's phone number by heart. I know because it's all on my phone. But when I was a kid, I still remember my old house line, all of my friends' phone numbers. Yeah. You know, I remember the busy signal before call waiting was even around. And yeah, so when you agreed to like meet your friends at the movies, wherever, at the swimming pool, whatever, you showed up, because if you didn't show up, they were going to be worried about you because you didn't, it's, and I think for us though, I think because we had that, we were allowed, it was kind of like, I think Shanti said it on one of our discussions where she said when a tree when its roots are firmly planted in the earth, it doesn't fear the wind. I think for us, because we had such a hands off as far as like Big Brother, as far as the government, we had parents still had, okay, so the drinking age here in America is 21. Yeah. When my mother was a child, it was 18, but they since moved it to 21 when I was growing up. So when I was like 14, 15 years old, my grandparents, my dad's parents and my parents were members of this country club in the town we lived in. Now a country club, it's just like a private social place. They have a swimming pool, tennis courts, and the members pay for it. So it's private property, and they have restaurants. And I'll never forget, I was with my grandfather, my dad's dad, and for some reason, it was just me and my granddad having dinner at the country club. And my grandfather, and this worked there because it was private, told the waiter to bring me a bourbon. And the waiter kind of looked at my granddad because he knew I was young. And I kind of looked at my granddad, and my granddad looked at the waiter and he goes, "She's my granddaughter. I'm her guardian, and I'm going to teach her how to drink responsibly." I was 14 years old, and they did it. So the parents still in our generation had that authority over their own children. And that's been stripped from us as well. I think it's been stripped from I think you guys in England and down in I know we can't say this word on YouTube, the land of kangaroos. I think it's been even more stripped from parents then, but it's unbelievable the amount of authority parents and grandparents, guardians used to have over their own children, and the government didn't get involved. Yeah. You know, I'll never forget, the same grandfather picked me up from school in like the 8th grade. Again, I was probably like 14 years old. And he was driving me home to their house, and he pulled the car over, his big Lincoln, because here in America, older people just drive Lincolns. They're huge. Pulled it over on the side of the road. It told me to get out. He changed places with me. I'm sitting behind the driver's seat. He goes, "Okay, drive us the rest of the way." Panicked. You get your learner's permit here at 15. If you're caught driving before then, you can get a lot of trouble. But I guarantee you, if a cop had pulled us over, my grandfather would have been like, "No, you go on home to your mama. This is my granddaughter." So they had that authority. So not only were we able to kind of have those experiences to create sovereignty where we didn't have helicopter parents, we didn't have Big Brother watching us, we were able to go into the woods by ourselves and play and work things out with our friends. You know, my sister and I used to get in trouble if we tattletaled. Yeah. She was like, "You only come to me if someone's dying, basically. Otherwise, you work it out yourself. Do not tattletale." So we learned not to do that. Yeah. And so there was honor there and integrity there. And we learned through our lessons with our friends and our siblings how to move about the world with more integrity. And so maybe the onslaught of these cell phones, I feel sorry for kids. You know, when you look at like school bullying, when we were kids, we just went home. Yeah. Kids now have to deal with it while they're at home too, online, and it's unbelievable. And so they've done this bunch of people. I love how Jadine calls them this bunch. This bunch, they're not stupid. Yeah, they're not. It's been very, very well orchestrated. But we're going to say enough now, aren't we? I mean, it is really difficult because when changes happen gradually,
it takes something to stop you in your tracks to actually make you realize a lot of this, because a lot of what we're talking about now, I didn't realize a couple of years ago,
Yeah.
because you're just carrying on with your busy life as normal. And I think, you know, this has been one of the beauties of this shit show, as we call it, for the last couple of years, has been the fact that, you know, the Great Awakening, the Great Reset has actually turned into the Great Awakening, because unbeknown to them, by them forcing this change of routine, it doesn't matter what side of the fence you're on, everyone is looking at things differently now.
Yeah.
And we
Absolutely.
didn't have that time before. I mean, some of my, I think we spoke last time, some of my daughter's friends are sort of saying, well, you know, we have a culture here where everyone goes to university now. When I grew up, it was, not everyone went to university, because you went if there was a purpose of you going to university, if you really love studying, if you wanted to do a certain job. But now everyone goes to university, but it's because it's so expected of them. A lot of people, that's not what they actually want. It's just they're on this rat race and they can't get out of it. And suddenly, my poor daughter's years have just had their whole end of schooling disrupted completely, with everything cancelled online and everything. And suddenly now a lot of them have not been able to go for a year, because they're like, why would I go to university to sit in my bedroom on my own and not
Right.
have any social life and do it? And so now some of them are saying, well, actually, no, I don't want to go now, actually, because it's given them that thinking time to actually say, is this what I really wanted? And they never had that thinking time before. So it's been really hard, but there have been a lot of benefits of it as well, you know, in terms of
Yeah.
making people appreciate one way or the other, or give a little bit more thought in terms of what do I want to do. Having
Yeah.
said that, there's still a lot of people that have got no idea what they can do, because, you know, if you're young and you're looking to go out and start whatever you might want to do for your career, for your job, you know, there's so many unknowns for them at the moment. You can't
Right.
plan your future.
Just saying that, I'm sitting here thinking about like what they've done, for a lot of times when I look at like university here in America, I always think of like one of the beautiful things about university here is it's not necessarily the book education you're getting, but it's that kind of that safety net between childhood and adulthood, where you have the responsibility of adult because you're not at home anymore,
Yeah.
but you also have a safety net of being still a student, so when things go really wrong you can kind of still have play the child card a little bit.
Mm.
And that type of education is not something, again, that comes from a textbook. And it's interesting, you can look back and see, I mean, college and university here in America is so freaking expensive now, like it just
Yeah.
I mean, it's unbelievable. And so they convince these students, that these kids, that in order for them to actually be prosperous and to have a life, that they have to do all the, and now in the United States, having your bachelor's isn't even enough anymore. You have to then go back and get your master's.
Oh yeah, same here. Yeah.
It's unbelievable. It's like freaking, like, back when I was a kid, your bachelor's is fine, but people who, if you're a doctor or a lawyer, then you would have more school, but that was what was expected. But I mean, these kids, and then they're walking out with just all this debt.
Yeah.
I mean,
Horrific.
they're never going to be able to pay it all back. It's going to go filter when they pass away. One day it's going to go to their kids, and so their kids are walking. And they've done this. And I mean, somebody was saying back in like the 1950s here in America, a family, let's say like a family of four, two parents, two kids, could buy a house, send their kids to school, all on like a laborer salary, with
Yeah.
and the mother could stay at home. And I know that because I think women should be able to work if they want to and all that kind of stuff. But I am aware now that feminist movement
Mm.
was instigated to try to get women out of the house. So what do you do then? You're sending your kid off to daycares even younger than you would have with like kindergarten age,
Yeah.
and so it started. And then of course, because now the woman is bringing in income, it ups the taxes. It's just, I mean, literally, it's a nightmare if you really sit back and look at it. It's like they played this because they play on your emotion. That's what all we're seeing. We're seeing that as well. Now it's like everything that happens, I'm like, is this a psyop? Because they're just playing with your emotion now. Everything is about playing on your emotions. I mean, we just had a big case here in America, and I'll be careful not to say the name, but the kid that was 17 that defended himself,
Mm.
you
Yes.
know,
Yeah, I know the one you mean. Yeah.
and it was this huge thing because of course they made it a race issue, which literally they were all white people involved.
Yeah.
And the kid was defending himself. Well, at first it was like, okay, good, this is a this is for us to be able to maintain our defense, our self-defense, which is in our Constitution. I think you guys know what we're talking about. But then now it's breaking that the courtroom was like a green screen. You see people's hands moving. It's the most bizarre. I don't even know what to think anymore.
No, I don't, because I saw some of those videos this weekend and I was just like, I think this is the interesting thing. I saw exactly that. And I was just like, well, I'm completely flummoxed about the whole thing now. I do not want to think. And so what I did is I switched everything off for the weekend and I didn't watch anything.
Yeah.
And I really, really needed that, actually. I went out walking, visited my son, rode my horses, fell off my horse for the first time in years, which was quite funny. And just had a thoroughly good time. And I really need it, because I thought, actually, this is a real lesson to me that I cannot, we think we're watching certain channels, certain information, and we can believe that. And then I thought, well, now I've seen this, a green stream, why would that happen?
Right.
What's the purpose? And then I saw him on an interview with Tucker Carlson, and he was saying it's not about race, it's about self-defense. And then he said, you know, I support BLM. And I was like, what's this?
I did not see that. I'm gonna have to Google that.
And I just thought,
language, it's a mind fuck, isn't it? It's like,
completely,
what the hell's happening? And you know, I mean, there were some funny memes. I will say there was a meme going around right when it happened, and it was like, if it wasn't for 17-year-olds with guns, you guys would still be British, you know, like about like, you know, but you know, it's just, I can't, I mean, I don't, at this point, it's like, I don't, as this matrix crumbles around us, and as we go through this, I mean, you think about when the Roman Empire fell, you know, the destruction that happens, and they did go into a dark age. And it's like, I know that when we switch, and this is true in all spiritual walks, this is kind of understood. Anytime there's that transition, whether it's from one timeline to the next, or whether it's inside your own house or your own body, as we say, with that friction, there has to be, it doesn't just automatically happen. Like there has to be this like time of transference. And you know, like our guru had a famous quote of "New body is making." And the thing about like the practice we do in yoga is it's so brutal that it really wrecks you. And Todd will be like, yeah, but what he didn't tell you was the new body has to break, or the old body has to break first in order for the new body to break. And I think that's what we're experiencing, is everything is just breaking. You know, people talk about like our whole reality being almost a simulation. Like we've created this simulation, which I kind of understand to an extent. It's easier, I think, to understand that in theory, but in practicality, that's a totally different experience. You know, when you're dealing with the day-to-day stuff and you're like, well, this is just a simulation that we're all involved with, we can shift it, but then it's not being shifted. It's just again, it's a total mind fuck. And you're right, sometimes you just have to turn everything off. When I have to turn things off, I usually listen to Broadway musicals.
Yeah,
because life is just much better when people are singing and dancing their way through tragedy. So
yeah, exactly. And I went out there and I saw my dogs going absolutely mad through the beautiful field, running like mad things. One of my cats has just jumped up there.
I know, I saw her.
Oh, I've got Duck up there and Coco there. So I've got two that have just joined me because they want to listen in. And I just thought, you know, okay, if this is a simulation, let's just enjoy it. And I know sometimes it's hard, and I did find it hard to enjoy this weekend, but I do still think it's very easy to be wise after the event. So, you know, when you're sort of having a moment, or whatever you might call it, or feeling it all catching up with you, that's not the time that you're going to actually see it. And then when I sat back this afternoon, and I thought, after a nice lunch with some lovely friends, and I thought, there's always a lesson in everything. There is always a lesson, and sometimes I can be very slow getting it, and other times it comes quicker. But it's just, I just think we've got to get back to the simplicity. For anyone involved in any spiritual teaching, has always been, it's all about the now. There is only the now.
Yep.
And I'm constantly talking about what's happening in the future. So I'm not saying other people, guys, I'm talking to, you know, sort of, I do this as well. We all do it. Is when's this going to happen? What's that going to happen? Will this person affect me? Will these laws affect me? Will these? And it is really hard to get the balance. So I'm going around in circles a bit, I know, but before, when I was driving, I listened to this brilliant interview on Mel K's BitChute, and it was about one of the award ceremonies that they've just had for a lot of the truther journalists. And there was this one lady, Laura, whatever, very famous journalist, that did the most amazing speech. And she was talking about what was actually happening in Nigeria at the moment, in Afghanistan and things like this. And it was just horrific stuff. So on one side, you've got, this is real and this is happening to people and all my problems are completely insignificant. And then in the other respect, you've got, yeah, what can I do to make the world a better place? So I know I can do that by not complying to their evil plans any longer. I know I can do it by being grateful for every day that I've got here and every animal that I'm spending to and every person that I'm speaking to. And I do think it's very important to have this awareness because, you know, as we keep saying, you can't get rid of the darkness if you don't shine the light on it. And people are going through absolute atrocities. And most of the time, most of us turn a blind eye because we either don't know about it or we do know about it and we think we can't do anything. But everyone can do something to make the world a better place every single day of their life.
And as Westerners, because we are so, and regardless of whether you're American, Canadian, Australian, European, English, whatever, we are so blessed. Like, you don't see the poverty that exists in other countries in a Western country. And sometimes because perception is reality, we get so tied up into like our own little world that we don't. And my mother used to make us like work soup kitchens when we were kids. And she would always tell us, to whom much is given, much is expected. To whom much is given, much is expected. And I'll tell you, I had a real like come to Jesus moment. My first trip to India, I was a couple months in, and anybody who from the West that travels to India knows that it can be a culture shock. To adjust. It takes you a little while to adjust to the rhythm of India. But if anybody's going to survive an apocalypse, it's going to be the Indians, because they are able to just flow with things very naturally. But we don't do our asana practice, posture practice on moon days. We're supposed to rest. And this particular year, there was a moon day on Christmas Day. It just worked out that way. And because Christmas isn't that big of a holiday there, if it hadn't have been a moon day, we would have had to get up at 2:00 in the morning and be at the shala practicing. But because it was a moon day the night before Christmas Eve, the Westerners, the Americans, the Europeans, we all kind of went out to celebrate and have a big meal together, you know, because that's a big holiday for us. Well, we went to this like Chinese restaurant, and most things are vegetarian. I'm a vegetarian, so it was all very kosher for us to eat, but it was so spicy that I just could not eat it. And my roommate at the time was with me, and we boxed up all of the food to take it home. But on our way home in the rickshaw, we were like, we're not going to eat this. Like, this is way too spicy. And so we decided we were going to go try to find a homeless person to see if they wanted it. And we ended up that night, which was super dangerous, and I really think this was a God move. We ended up in the slums. And we gave the food to this family, and they came out and were like touching our feet. They were I'd never seen somebody so grateful for leftover Chinese food that I got emotional, and I felt like such an asshole. Excuse my language. I just was like, oh my God, I'm such a freaking spoiled brat. Here I am worried about crap that is not even important. These people are living in basically a trash shack. And they're thanking me for leftover Chinese food. And that was when we actually ended up and that was the motivation. We have a foundation that we have now. Every time we go to India to study, we always, because we're there for months at a time, we have a foundation where we actually raise money and provide goods for the slums. So I've gotten very familiar with that now. I've worked with people there and tried to figure out their government system to make sure they get what they get. And then we added within that foundation dog rescue as well. We brought 6 dogs back so far, including my little boy. You know, and just doing that. And it is true, we all can do something. The most important thing you do is have that self-realization for yourself, but you don't know how much power you possess, especially, and yes, things are tough across the board for everyone, but still in West, and Tamara said this, I asked her once, like, how are you doing? And she was like, listen, I have a roof over my head. I have food in my cabinet. I have a warm bed to sleep in tonight. I'm fine.
Yeah.
And just that reality check of, oh my God, I'm in such a place of power because I am fine. You know, like in India, 10 US dollars in India will get supplies for one child in the slums for a whole year.
God.
$10.
Yeah. And a lot of people will spend that on 2 coffees or
On a
something.
Starbucks, yeah. Now with our prices, 1 coffee, but
Yeah.
yeah. And I got in touch with, I know a safe house now that works with these kids to help them get into, you know, these are kids, some of these kids don't even, because in India, you have to pay for medicine as well, but some of the parents don't have the money. Like in America, you have to pay for medicine, but they have to take you. Even if you
Yeah.
can't pay, they by law have to take you. So when these babies are born, a lot of them are actually born in the slums.
Yeah.
And so what that means is they don't have a birth certificate. Now, we know what that really is now, but that's a different topic for a different day. However, for these children, because there is the bad side of that is because there is no paperwork for these kids, they technically don't exist in the system. And so if something were to happen to the parents, there is such things as slumlords. Slumdog Millionaire is a great example of a reality of what happens there. If something were to happen to the parents, these are the kids that get snatched up, and you guys know what we're talking about. They get sent away to horrific places. And so I did connect with a safe house there that takes in the vulnerable children and gives them protection. But yeah, it just, that was one of the biggest lessons for me as an American, to realize like the opportunity that the universe gave me by just where I was born in the world. And that's true for anybody in England. That's true for everybody across Europe, Canada. Like, you were, just by being born in a country like ours, yeah, there's a lot of craziness going on involving the matrix and stuff, but yet you are in a position where you can really instigate change. And if you can do that in a developing country, which India is considered a developing country or a third world country, then that same power can also be manifested in your own country as well. You know what I'm saying? So, and yeah, not lying, I refuse to this anymore. I will not do it. I just will. And thank God, I mean, I'm in a state where that's not really an issue anyway, because this is the deep
We've
south.
had it mandated over here for ages. It's actually not at the moment, although the people choose to do it, but I still haven't worn one at all, even when it was mandated. And it's amazing, because I don't count myself as a particularly rebellious person at all. But, you know, that's why I'd never be any good in the armed forces, because if someone gave me a command and I think it's ridiculous, there's no bloody way I'm following it.
Yeah.
No, I just not. And I'm quite a compliant person in most aspects of life, because, you know, I enjoyed education, I enjoyed school, I enjoy a lot of that. I've enjoyed most of my jobs. And if I haven't, I've just chosen to leave, you know. So, but there's no way I'm doing something ridiculous like that. Like your mum always used to say when in school, if they told you to put your head in a fire, would you do that too? And you're like, no, I wouldn't. And I'm not going to do this just because some idiot has told me to do something that makes absolutely no sense to me at all.
Just like what we say here, if your friends were jumping off of a bridge, would you?
Yeah, would you? Yeah, exactly. And it is like that. But unfortunately, at the moment, most of them would, you know,
Yeah.
people would. And I wonder what has happened to do that, but more importantly, what we can do to change it and change it around. If we do always the kindest thing to do, to let a lot of people jump off the bridge, you know. I mean, again, is it my place to interfere with that?
That's actually a really good point. And Todd talks about this a lot with the idea of karma. And all karma is, people have in the West have this like juju look at karma. It's just every action has an equal and opposite reaction. That's what karma is. It's cause and effect. And so in like the spiritual world, we call karma your work. It's your work. It's things you have to work through. And so like as a teacher, when you're, especially in traditional yoga, you always are kind of walking this fine line of, if you see something's about to happen with a student, you teach them, but at some point you have to back up, because they have a contracted action and reaction or karma that they have to work out themselves. And so you have to step back and let them like make mistakes, let them jump off the bridge if that's what they want to do. You can't stand in that way, because then once you stand in that way, you're also compromising the main law of the cosmos, which is free will. You can't.
There's a big difference between like being a parent. We were talking earlier. So, you know, I've got 2 children. Okay, they're big now. I've got lots of 4-legged children as well. And, you know, as a parent, you take on a decision-making role up to a certain point, when they are at a stage where they will then live their own lives and you have to let them do that. So I might try and give my children advice now, but They're very selective which bits they'll take and which bits they won't, and that's the way it should be. It's exactly the way it should be, because and you see that in the world. We've spoken a lot about the rescue dogs before. A mum with a litter of pups, there'll be a certain age where they will go off and make their own decisions, and some of them make it and some of them won't. And that is the harsh reality of nature. And I think it's very, very interesting. I love these discussions, and I have no idea what the answer is.
Neither do I. That's
where you do it. I think you've just got to follow. I was thinking today about, when I see things where, for me, with the way people are with their animals, and I would perceive it as cruelty, and to them it's not, and I'm like, do you say something or not? And I just have to go with my gut feel and sort of think, if I think it's in that animal's best interest, I'll definitely absolutely say something.
Even if sorry, hold on one second.
That's all right.
Hold on. Speaking of animals,
yes,
right, go outside. Go outside. He knew his cue. I was telling for everybody watching, I was telling Catherine before we signed on that my dog has a crush on Catherine. So every time I film with Catherine, he always seems to know. He gets right beside me, and most of the time he starts to clean his boy bits like he's preparing for a date. So
oh, he knows I love him. It's so I just like, at the moment I am just personally at the stage where I don't know the answer to any of these questions, but I'm enjoying having the discussion around the questions, because you cannot see it from your point of view. The six of us that were together at lunch today, we're all in very different circumstances, and personally it's really helpful to have someone looking a little bit objectively in on a circumstance and sort of saying, well, what about this, what about that, etc. Because when you're so emotionally attached, because you're right in the middle of a situation, it's very difficult for a lot of us to actually step back and sort of think, what are the other options here?
I had a teacher once up in Philadelphia before I started going to India that he would always call it the unsolvable riddle. The unsolvable riddle. And that was, and you knew going down the spiritual path that there were going to be the theory. Everything is so much easier in theory than it is in actual practice, and that becomes the unsolvable riddle, because most of the time, I talk about friction all the time. Those are opposing forces that are coming together, and those opposing forces are creating that friction. And it's like, what do you do with that? Well, it creates change, but then it opens up a whole bunch of other avenues of possibility and obstacles that sometimes you don't always have the answer for. And one of my favorite quotes of all time is, in the end, everything will be okay. If it's not okay, it's not the end. And I have to remind myself of that a lot. Like there is a divine, I believe anyway, and I think anybody that has a deep relationship with animals, with children, with the innocent among us, knows that there is this like divinity within the nature, and Shanti talks about this, but Cindy talks about this a lot in their teaching, that the Shakti is the action of the soul. And so nature itself, even though nature and the soul are two different entities, nature is the action of the soul at work. And so I do know, you do sit back and think, okay, everything is happening rhythmically because of this friction, because of these soul contracts, because of stuff that our brains don't quite understand, but maybe deep down our psyche does, but yet we still don't have an answer. And I can't tell you, there have been so many times, like every time, like we're traveling today for Thanksgiving, and there have been so many times this past couple of years where we've traveled, where I've literally packed up all of our really valuable belongings, whether sentimental or not, because I'm like, oh my God, are we going to come back and there's going to be like there's going to be another, RIOT, here, because it's just such uncertain times. I don't know what next month is going to bring. I think a lot of us thought by this point we would already be like portaling to each other to have lunch. I think a lot of us thought we would already be, but this, like I was saying, this transference takes time. We know that the age of Aquarius started last December 21st over the winter solstice. I think it was Saturn and Jupiter were aligned in some way, and it resembled what they called the Star of Bethlehem, which was another kickoff. And so we know that was the starting of the age of Aquarius, but it's like opening that door. The door has to open, and it's going to take, it could take up to 2 years for it to totally transfer. And if we are looking at such a huge drastic difference from what we knew as reality to what now we're walking into as reality, there's going to be a period of a lot of struggle, because and it's with ourselves too, because we know, I mean, I think we've talked about this, Catherine. Like, I know some things are going to come out in the next year or so that's going to shock me. Like,
Yeah.
I know that I don't know. We know enough to know we don't know everything.
Yeah.
You know, I think I always laugh and say, if you had asked me 5 years ago what the Earth looked like, I would have told you what the picture that they give that I'm not going to say the name, but that institution
Yeah.
gives us. And now I'm like, I have no idea what we're standing on. I have no idea what a planet is. No clue at this point. And so even the fact that if you're even, and I do think that there is some wisdom and some power in saying, I don't know, and not having the answer.
It's so brilliant. It's just my new favorite expression, because it just takes all the pressure off yourself.
Yeah.
It takes all the pressure off yourself, because actually, and as you say, I really don't know. And a lot of the stuff that I thought I knew yesterday, I now realize I've changed my mind on today. Typical woman. But no, it's so true. It is so true. And I think I just think that there is a reason why we're all going through this. And I think if we don't try and understand it all, but we still, in whatever way we as individuals are drawn to, do need to take some sort of inspired action, because I'm seeing a lot of anger towards very different people. Now, it doesn't matter whether it's to a truther that's told them something that people are now deciding is misleading, or whether it's a politician, or whether it's a medical professional or whatever. To me, the problem's the same. We're still blaming other people for things that at that stage we have chosen to believe. So if I know people have said this before, but if I said, Brice, you look like a purple elephant, it wouldn't offend you, because it's just ridiculous.
Right.
If I say something that's a little bit closer to the mark, you can take offense. But regardless of who said what and what you've chosen to do, there was a reason why you chose to listen to it at the time.
Right.
And there's a reason why you've now decided it may no longer serve you. But there's so much wasted energy that we as humans place in then berating others. And you're thinking, God, if we all use that energy for something a bit more constructive,
yeah,
it might go a bit smoother for us.
And that's, you hit the nail on the head too. And I've said this before on many shows about the idea of triggers, that each person has a trigger. That and the strange thing is, like, especially here in America, and I guess this is kind of happening all over the world with this bunch, is that they're making it seem like to be triggered is a bad thing.
Yeah.
And everyone has to walk on eggshells around each other, and you can't, you have to watch what you say because you don't want to upset someone. But in any type of spiritual practice, and we are all, I think one thing I know for sure is that we're not human beings having a spiritual experience. We're spiritual beings having a human experience. Your triggers are kind of your bullet points. And when things, and I know in my practice alone, if I'm doing a posture that triggers like an emotion in me, it's not the posture's fault. It's not my teacher's fault. It's the practice. So if you look at life as one big practice, one big lesson, when those things come up, it's the universe or your psyche, your consciousness going ding, ding, ding. There's something interesting here. For example, on David Zublick's show once a week, we have been reading through the Yoga Sutras. It was his idea. We took a break from the missing books of the Bible, but just to try to dispel some of the bad information about yoga being demonic, which it's not at all. So we're reading through the Yoga Sutras. And I got an email. I get lots of fun emails all the time from very lovely people, we'll just say, but it was from a fundamentalist Christian in the United States that told me that I should be arrested and sent to the spa, as Janine calls it, and for promoting yoga. And my whole response to that was like, your anger at me for promoting this practice that helps people has everything to do with you and nothing to do with me. Nothing to do with me.
Absolutely.
And so when we find ourselves getting triggered, it's like, okay, what is unhealed in me? What unhealthy attachment do I have? I think as I would guess that as a parent, that is one of the biggest, hardest lessons to learn, because I even know with my niece and my nieces and my nephew that I would like do anything for them, but then to be able to not to let them go and live their lives and make their mistakes. I mean, my dog, I mean, I've already told him that he can't leave until I leave. Like he's
Yeah.
just gonna have to live forever. He's just gonna have to go with me. Like that's not acceptable. He's gonna have, because I feel like he's my soulmate, my dog. So,
Yeah.
but you know, so it's like this is all these natural, these responses, these extreme feelings of emotions, even happy ones, are triggers for us to reflect on our own self. And Shanti does a really good job of talking about this and how it's your soul learning itself. I mean, Alan Watts, who was a great philosopher, who
Yeah. I
thought,
love his stuff.
oh man, he's fantastic. And he always talked about, you know, it's like the eyeball. So the eyeball trying to actually see itself. All we see ourselves in reflections. I see myself in the camera right now. We see it in a mirror. We see, but it's always a distorted reflection because it's not actually seeing we never actually physically see ourselves.
Exactly.
How can we? And so it's this really complex understanding of the human spirit, the Atman, which is the deeper level of eternity within you, and all this other smoke and mirrors going on around you. Even as stressful as it is, have empathy, have compassion, but it's also teaching you. I know this is weird because I know Jean-Claude and Janine just did a deep dive into the Wizard of Oz and that kind of stuff. But at the end, remember, Glinda the Good Witch says, my dear, you've had it inside of you all along to go home, or she's to click her heels together. She's like, you've had it inside of you all along. And hopefully at the end of this transition, that's what most people, including us, I mean, I'm not saying I've mastered this. This is why I still have to practice yoga every morning, because I haven't mastered it, you know, but it's that we will move out of this storm, this transition with more of an understanding of taking personal responsibility for our own emotions, for our own karma, for our own work, instead of projecting it onto other people. You know, that's how the governments got so powerful to begin with, is we projected everything onto them.
Yeah, absolutely, completely. And it's so easy. And also just being fine. If you've got triggers, just being fine with that, being absolutely fine with it, but realizing it's your trigger. And that's why people get so annoyed, because they're like, well, how could you love that person because they've said that? And it's just like, yeah, but we're all at different stages of our journey. And we really are all at different stages of our journey. But that doesn't mean, there's a big difference between, you know, everyone going through their own karma and lessons in life, and also letting real evil and demonic behavior play out and doing nothing about it. You know, there's a difference. I think when there's a reason why you awaken to things, and if you are seeing something, then for me that means you have an obligation to do something about it.
And the Yoga Sutras does speak about this, especially Sri Swami Satchitananda in his commentary talks about this. Like, this doesn't mean that you just sit back.
Yeah.
Like, don't get involved. It's kind of like, and I know Gandhi is a controversial figure for Indian people. I understand that. And I'm sure there's a lot we're going to learn about him. But some of the stuff that's used an example is that he stood up for what was right, but he did it peacefully. You know, and that there's a way, and he still sat back and let it register through him. And that's kind of what we're learning is, it doesn't mean that you don't stand up. That doesn't mean that you just go with the flow by complying to tyrannical actions. You have to, and that might be part of your lesson too, is learning how to stand up for yourself. I know I have a hard time standing up for myself sometimes. And so that's been a huge lesson for me. When this whole thing started, at first I would just put it on in the grocery store just to not have to deal with any issues. But then I realized that by doing that, I wasn't giving myself the opportunity to learn a lesson. And so I stopped wearing it. And you know what? Haven't had any issues. Had no issues whatsoever. And now I don't even think about it. I just go in there and do my shopping. I smile at people. I don't even give it a second thought. And so, you know, that could be the lesson as well, as learning how to do that. You know, especially, and I don't know if this is just a Southern women thing. It might be something that's just for females across the globe. But as a woman, we're taught to be kind of demure and to not rock the boat and to be pleasant. And there's a place for that. There's a place, you know, you can't walk around just being an asshole all the time. Like, you need to be a pleasant person and be nice to people, kind to people. But you also need to stand up. You know, it's like, I know Cindy a lot, and Ashley actually spoke about this when she did her reading with Jean-Claude about the age of the dragon.
Yeah.
This dragon, fierce energy coming in. And that has been equated to the Mother Mary as well, because you think about, as a mother, I mean, you're a mother, Catherine, if you had to watch your child go through what her son went through, and you had to stand there and not and be there with him as his mother, and then take the body down. I mean, that's dragon energy. That's the divine feminine energy. You know, you didn't, and in fact, at that, as we're told, at that specific timeline in history, none of the men stayed around. It was the women that watched it, that actually watched it go down with a man that they loved, their son, their friend, their husband, whatever he was to them, you know. And that is dragon energy, to be able to come in and stand there and take it. But you also think about the fire that comes out, that fire of destruction. But then, you know, they always say the opposite of war isn't peace. The opposite of war is creation. And so you need that destruction first in order to then recreate. And part of that, I think, at the end of the day, what's really happening with all of us is the destruction within our own psyche.
I think this is it. I think this is what they mean. It's what I'm saying to you. It's a destruction at all, and we're all going to go at different paces, and that is absolutely fine. And we're all going to attract different triggers into our lives at different stages to get us on to the next stage of the lesson. But I do strongly believe, even though it's an annoying trigger for me, is you're not, the universe or God or whatever your word is you want to use for it does not give you more than you're ready for.
Exactly.
So if there's a challenge coming in for you, you are ready and you will get through it. And you know, it is easy to sit there and say, whilst I'm sitting in my nice warm office with my cats, I do see that could be a huge trigger for a lot of people watching. But you know, at the end of the day, me spending my life miserable thinking about all the hurts isn't going to do anyone any good. But me taking action on the things that I can do something about is absolutely my responsibility, and one I take very, very seriously.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you're going off for a few days off now, are you?
Yes, we're
How
going.
Exciting.
I know. Well, it's a long drive down to, we're going to go see family and just
chill.
I'm probably going to be doing a lot of, you know, it's interesting. I kind of consider myself to be a nerd with all my, but I like it. I like the salacious. It's part of me that likes, it's kind of like some of these stories of the past that I research are like telenovelas, you know, they're just kind of like very dramatic. Like our ancestors lived some pretty juicy lives, you know, so it's kind of, I'll probably do a lot of work while I'm down there too. So, you know, it'll be interesting to see. I know, as we were saying at the beginning, I know a lot of people are stressed about this holiday season coming up, and it is hard in America because we do have like bam, bam. It's like Thanksgiving, Christmas, and that's always how it is, the holiday season. And, you know, it just gets more and more. I mean, we were talking about that before, like when we were kids, Christmas was not as big as it is now. You know, now it's like kids get like the whole living room's filled with
it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Crap, basically. It's basically crap is what it, you know, they don't even, they toss it after 5 minutes. I think they just have more fun opening the damn thing.
Yeah.
My niece, who was born in May, she's a baby. I actually just posted her video on Twitter of her eating food for the first time, and her reaction, her eyes just cracked me up. But she's the third child. So, you know, third child, she was born, the nursery wasn't set, you know, it's very different from the first child. But my sister was like, you know, we're talking about the kids' Christmas presents. And my sister's like, so I was like, so what should we get May? She's so little. Like, what do you, my sister was like, listen, we're just going to take some of her old toys and we're going to wrap them.
Exactly.
Just let her, you know, I was like, that's simple.
Yeah, it is so simple. It's just like the cats. The cats don't want the toys, they just want the box.
Yeah,
give the cat a box.
My dog does that too.
So long as it's not an Amazon box sprayed with horrible pesticides, as we're finding out and everything. But I don't want to be down. But have an amazing break, and we will be speaking next Monday. We have got our lovely round table with honorary woman Jean-Claude is get invited to be a chick for the night. So we're going to be doing that with Medina, yourself, myself, and Jean-Claude. And then also I will be contacting you about some of our other lovely chats, because I just love it. I love exploring these. I love learning. I love watching most of the comments below the videos and learning from those. And the other ones that are triggering me, then that's my issue to deal with. But it's quite
still block if they're
I was going to say that delete button comes in great times at times.
I still have that. We still put that boundary up and be like, nope.
It's great. It's exactly.
Yeah.
I love it. And I giggle every time as well. It makes me laugh. So have an amazing trip. I can't wait to hear all about it. And we will be speaking again next week.
Absolutely. Bye, guys.
Bye.